alive and kicking in. We're only into 2 weeks of 2015. So come on in, get yourselves comfortable. If you haven't had a chance to sample a bagel or two, I think we have a ton of bagels over on the wall. Bagels are over there. So please come on and get yourself seated, and we will get started. So to open us up in prayer, I'm going to turn the mic over to wonderful Edia. Here you go, Edia.
Shall we stand to honor God? Oh Lord, our Heavenly Father, we thank you for this night. We thank you for all the moments of our lives that we have lived from the time you woke us up this morning down to this very moment. Lord, we just bless your name because you've been so kind, so good, so merciful to us. We thank you for all the people that we have encountered tonight. We thank you for all the volunteers who have helped us, for our leadership that has guided the operations of this whole thing. We just consider we consider CNM just a blessing to us, and we just want to thank you. Tonight you brought before us a servant, a chosen one that you have selected to give us some knowledge, to give us some wisdom. Lord, let whatever is spoken, let whatever is seen, let whatever is felt be a movement from you and be in every way a method that you are using tonight to speak to our hearts. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen.
Thank you, Edia. Well, come on in and get yourself seated. We have a few announcements to make. So first off, while everybody's coming in, I'm just curious. Our new handbook team, are they here? Raise your hand. We have any of our handbook developers here? No, all of our handbook developers. They're probably like hibernating because they've only spent like a year and a half working on our new handbook. So if you haven't seen our new CNM handbook, it is absolutely awesome. We've got extra copies, I believe, up here up front. It's also available electronically on our meetup group, so please check that out. There's Sarah. So Sarah, wave. Our star. So Sarah, what happened tonight? Someone actually. Do you want to come here? Do you want? How did that conversation go with Chris? Here we go. Now wait, got to watch for the microphone. Here we go.
Okay, so no good deed goes unpunished. I just finished working with about 20 or 30 people on this, thinking I can sort of slide. So I walk in today and somebody says, Sarah, I want you to meet somebody. So I may be helping somebody edit a book he's doing. So as I said, no good deed goes unpunished. We shall see how that works out.
Yes, but he actually said he might even have a little bit of moolah.
We didn't talk about the money, but we will. Okay,
great. So the reason why I wanted to bring Sarah up, first off, it is an amazing handbook. Sarah did a huge amount of effort with a whole team of people. But we keep on encouraging you to volunteer in some way, shape, or form, because one of the things we often talk about amongst the leadership team and the volunteers is that we can speak more positively and do more than just a warm referral if we actually see you work. If you actually volunteer, whether it's here or somewhere else, if you're trying to fill that void in your resume where you're not getting an income, but you're doing what is your strength and your talent, just like with Sarah helping out with our handbook, we now know how amazing she is when she puts her mind to a project and sees it through to the end. She's a wonderful, smiling, personable young lady, right? We know how wonderful she is, but we now know how talented she is. So please consider volunteering, whether it's for us or somewhere in your world. Consider volunteerism, because it really is an amazing way to showcase your strengths and to bolster that resume while you're in transition. So on that note, another way that you can... thank you for that. So another way to enhance your skill set while you're in transition, we have this little group that started. You may have heard of them. They sort of help people learn how to present effectively and positively and build that great brand that we keep on talking about, what's so important. It starts with a T. What's the name of that group? Is that the Deep Fryers or the it's the Toastmasters. Oh, why don't we have you guys come on up? Let's give them a round of applause. Do you know we have our own Toastmasters chapter? Who am I going to give the microphone to? Marianne? Okay.
Okay, we just wanted to invite everybody that is available on the first and third Tuesdays to join us in the Toastmasters Club that we've started here. These are some of our members. As you can see, we have a good time. We work on communications, leadership, public speaking. It even helps for interviews. So these are the two books that the Debbie and Joe team here these are the books that you get when you become a member. It's very cheap. CNM is sponsoring us for the, what do you call it? The startup fee. Thank you. And so it's really very reasonable, and it's really a lot of fun. We meet in 1605 at 6:45, the first and third Tuesday. So we'd like to welcome you. Join us. We have a good time, and we learn how to speak better. Oh, and Carol has membership applications. If anybody's interested, you can always take one and think about it. Okay? Come visit us. See what we're all about. She should be. Thank you.
Thanks, Marianne. Now, of course, what I hate about that group is we're going to start getting people so good at doing presentations that I can see my job is in jeopardy. I'm going to get booted off the front here because people are going to be so much better than I am at this. But we're really grateful to have CNM helping us sponsor that. And I did hear the cheap word. So it's not cheap, it's a great value. It's a great value. Okay. We also have probably one of the most important things that we do at CNM is to recognize when people have landed. And sometimes you land a full-time position, sometimes you just land a great volunteer opportunity, sometimes you land a part-time opportunity, but doing a victory lap is really a big thing for us. And one of our wonderful volunteers, Bo, has a victory lap to do this evening. So please give Bo a round of applause, and we want to hear a victory lap. Here you go, Bo. First, a hug.
Okay, first of all, I wanted to thank everybody that helped out with the Christmas party, and thank you for the flowers. But I particularly want to thank two young ladies, and I say young, Melissa and Sarah, because they just put all their creativity, and there were so many other people that helped out that evening, and I hope you all enjoyed it. I didn't get a chance to. Can somebody else hold another party so I can enjoy it? That would be great. So on to the big things. Thank you. On to the big thing. First of all, I want to thank the directors, the screenwriters, the grips, who else? I'm sorry, I thought this was the Grammys or the Emmys. Let me go on with my victory laps. I have two small victory laps. And first of all, I wanted to acknowledge these people, and if they're in the room, I need them to just sort of stand up. Bob Kay, Will Yateman, Dave Pierce, Mal, Dwayne, Melissa, Sarah Bridwell, Gail Cockett, Paul Cuddy, J.V., John Foster, Edia, Rob Jolitz, and Connie Bash. These tremendous people helped me in so many ways that is incredible. The hug that I should give them is not big enough, so I'm asking God to embrace his hands around each of them with his hug, which was even better. So I wanted to thank them for sure. And it just pays to volunteer, as we've been talking earlier on. And by the way, I've joined Toastmasters, so hopefully the next time I have to speak, I'll speak better than I am. So just bear with me. So about 5-6 years ago, I got laid off from British Telecom. It was the norm thing then. It was over a year, and I was fortunate to land a job. after a year and stayed there for 2 years and 4 months, which it was only supposed to be 3 months. It was part-time, so I took it. It was paying very well for a part-time job. And when that ended, all sorts of other things ended. But during this time, I had battled with health issues of my own, my family, death of my best friend, my cat, and many major legal issues of my own. And this was an eye-opener. I also saw a lot of people in the streets, and it was by the grace of God that I have 2 parents that were able to take me on and support me. And I realized that one day when I walked into Starbucks, and there was a man in the corner who was homeless. And with what money I had, I bought him a hot chocolate. And I just said, thank you, God, I'm not homeless. That's why I am so happy to be proud and be happy to be part of you. Because in this room are so many unique people with so many different stories. Some are not so good, some are okay. Some come with wealth behind them, some don't. Some are sleeping in their cars. Some have medical insurance. Others are falling short of their medications. I understand more and more about a lot of things that are on in this room than some of you will realize. And this has been such a great ministry for me. I'm going to continue volunteering here because it is my ministry. And it was, once I realized this was my ministry, that's when things started happening more for me, because I didn't take it as a job seeker. So the first thing that came about, my first small little victory lap, was I started my own business, offering personal assistant service, admin, event planning, house, pet sitting, just a smorgasbord of things that I could offer. And 2 of the alumni from CNM are interested in my services. And I have a few other people that I do various pet sitting services for them. Then in November, Bob sent an email to me and asked, did I know anybody interested in this part-time job? Well, I jumped on it. I said, I need a part-time job so I can sort of keep up the business. So I applied, and within a couple hours I got a call, had a phone interview right then. The next day was in for an in-person interview and started on that Monday. And I've been working. I've gotten 2 paychecks. We get paid monthly. And I'm excited about that. It's small money, but I've hit the jackpot for several reasons. One of the reasons is that I volunteer. I belong to CNM. The person that contacted Bob goes to McLean Bible. Bob knows people in CNM. So what a great lead this was. It was from the church, and one of the very own of CNM got the job. So I thought that was fascinating. The other thing is my supervisor is a Christian. And yes, just the other day, we, in the middle of the conference room, nobody else was in the office, we just prayed. She was having a difficult time. And I couldn't believe what came out of her mouth first. I thought, since she's my supervisor, I better let her pray first. And she says, I want to thank you for bringing Bo to me. I've never had any acknowledgement like that in my life. And that just was so blessed. And this is a very small company. The name of the group is Energy and Security Group. They're in Reston. And I'm talking very, very small. We just moved offices. We will not have internet or phone until February. So I'm telling you, it's quite small. And my supervisor's a Christian. Not anybody else in the group is, but she said she would prefer to have a Christian work with her, but, she has to be careful what she says. but it's a great situation. I thank Bob for that lead, and I thank for Katya, my supervisor, who goes to this church. So I'm happy to say that I'm working part-time. Thank you.
Thank you, Bo. Congratulations. So those of you that are new to CNM, one of the things about doing victory laps, we always like to acknowledge the success of our attendees, but many times it's just realizing you just never know the story of how you're going to land. I mean, I think that gives us enough hope to know it could be someone you meet in the grocery line. It could be through one of the volunteers that happens to have a great connection. You just never know how that's going to play out. And there's always interesting stories out there to be heard, and I'm glad we have a chance to share those amongst our group. So on that note, we have someone that's going to share more than just an interesting story. They have a presentation to make to us tonight. Najwa, would you like to come on up and make that introduction of our speaker tonight? So Najwa, who is one of our wonderful volunteers, who is just a delight, and she's one of the most special people in CNM, so the microphone is yours.
Only because I have the CNM opportunity. Love you guys. I've kind of been stalking this man. He talked to us, gosh, about 2 years ago, and I think I booked this about a year ago. Anyway, Greg is one of those rare people that really tries to dig deep into people's psyches to help them figure out what they really should be focusing on. He's all about values, nurturing the passions in our lives. Many of us are in specific careers, perhaps because we got an education to be in that career, perhaps because we fell into it and we've just worked on it for years and years. So we have our core, pragmatic, practical subjects about interviewing and figuring out the organization you're going to and how to present yourself and your victory lap and your elevator speech and all of that. But tonight we will delve a bit more into our souls. Greg does have a spiritual grounding, and he's brought with him his newest book. When he came here the last time, he spoke about his book called Callings, and he had a really overwhelming response. So his new book is called Vital Signs, the Nature and Nurture of Passion. He'll be asking us a lot of questions, and I think giving us some good inspiration. So welcome back to CNM, Greg.
Testing. Oh, right. Well, good evening. Good evening. Nice to be back. Summer would have been a nicer time, however. All right, so I think I'm going to just jump right in. I just received a letter from my older brother, Mark, who wrote to announce that he had just decided to retire from Stanford University and go to work for Google, where he had spent the last 2 years on a leave of absence from the university, working primarily on the Google Glass project. We have any Google Glass wearers in the audience? All right. You have it with you? No. So he said that it was the single hardest decision of his life, and one that's irreversible. He cannot ever go back to being a professor at Stanford. And in the final analysis, though, he said he faced two inarguable truths. One is he was having more fun at Google, and two, he was enjoying just fresh challenge. And I'm impressed, particularly impressed, with the fact that his decision to leave the university was based largely on the desire to have more fun, which certainly is the basis for a momentous and irreversible life decision would almost seem to be a little frivolous. yet it's anything but, in my opinion. So his decision to leave a job that doesn't get much more prestigious or secure than a tenured professorship at Stanford, and for somebody as logical as he is, in order to have more fun, struck me as a profound validation of the importance of that precious commodity. And he said that one of the pivotal factors in his decision to leave the university was, of all things, a little newspaper clipping that I had sent him way back when he started it at Stanford. And it said, and which he said he had kept pinned to the center of his bulletin board ever since. And it said, how fossils are formed. Step 1, get tenure. Step 2, teach for 20 years. And he said that by the time I leave Stanford in a couple of years, it will have been exactly tenure plus 20 years. And thank you for sending me the clipping. Now, the philosopher Nietzsche was fond of encouraging people to live dangerously. He said, build your cities on the slopes of Vesuvius. Send your ships into uncharted seas. Now, this is a sentiment that looks great on a poster. But it's another matter entirely when we're talking about the lives of ordinary people, especially, I think, when what may be at stake is a regular paycheck, pension, medical benefits. Never mind that the only reason you're using the medical benefits is your job is making you sick. When what may be at stake is domestic tranquility, on the home front, or even just your physical safety, right? But this much I think is certain. The desire to have passion in your life, to say nothing of fun, it is joined at the hip with the desire for safety and security and a sense of control over our lives. And I think one of the high arts of living dangerously is continually refereeing the tug of war between passion and security. I once heard somebody say that heroism, or of course heroinism, can be redefined for the modern age as the ability to tolerate paradox, to hold two contrary or seemingly contrary forces, ideas, energies, impulses, beliefs, even beliefs inside you at the same time and still retain the ability to function. To say nothing of hanging on to your cookies. And not everybody manages to hang on to their cookies. I read a newspaper article just recently that described police being summoned to an apartment complex in Mesa, Arizona, after neighbors reported a fight between a man and a woman that included screaming and breaking things. But when they got there, all they found was a 21-year-old man simulating a fight between a man and a woman by alternating a high-pitched voice with a low-pitched voice. And I love that the article rather dryly noted that he was referred for a medical exam. Apparently, the inability to hold paradox was perhaps the least of his problems. But, and I had, just not long ago, I made a very revealing little Freudian slip that I think highlights some of the challenges of managing the tension between passion and security. I had gone on the road to do some adventure travel, to send my ships into uncharted seas, if you will, at a time when I had a whole lot of irons in the fire, a lot of business projects that I was in the middle of juggling, and I was apparently more stressed out about it than I was aware, because what I meant to say on the outgoing message of my answering machine was, "Hello, this is Gregg Levoy. I'll be out of the office until August 25th. But what I actually said, and didn't find out until I got home, was, hello, this is Gregg Levoy. I'll be out of control until August. My general, which should probably explain some of the messages that I had waiting for me when I got home. You all right? But my general observation is that in the contest between passion and security, security tends to win. All right? Doesn't that probably sound familiar? Security tends to win. Passion tends to get backburnered. Right? But if you're not expressing it somewhere or another, vocational or non-vocational, if you're not expressing it, then you're suppressing it or repressing it or depressing it, which all mean the same thing, pushing it down. Pushing it down. Right? And I think that this struggle is not just a personal issue. I think it's a collective issue. Because I think we belong to a culture that likes its gates and its guardrails, that likes its bailouts and its subsidies, where schools eradicate playgrounds for insurance purposes, where manufacturers feel compelled to put warning labels on their products that say things like, caution, hot coffee is hot. Right? Or do not iron clothes on body. Or this Superman costume does not enable you to fly. I'm not making these up. All right, here's my favorite one. Remove children from stroller before folding up for storage. I mean, do we really need to be told this? You know, this is the state of things. Security at all costs. But I think that continually opting for comfort and security over passion, over enthusiasm, this is my opinion, whether it's in your work life or your love life or your creative life, will not, in my opinion, ever adequately compensate you for giving up your passions and selling your soul. Though it probably will allow you to suffer in nicer surroundings. Work off your frustrations with better recreational equipment or something, right? But the fact of the matter is, we don't just crave safety and security. Even in a code orange world, we also crave their opposite. We crave excitement and novelty and discovery and reverence and passion and an adrenaline rush. And a locker at the bus station. You know, we like life to occasionally be unpredictable and full of surprises. We like to feel alive. And I think that we also intuitively know that being alive without feeling alive is like eating food with no taste to it. You know? So I've actually read that some people consider neurosis to be, you know, the split between, the struggle and the split between two essential parts of ourselves. That's their definition of neurosis, is the struggle between two warring parts of ourselves. And ultimately they seem to come down to the natural self and the socialized self. You know what I'm saying? Who you were told to be, taught to be, and who you know yourself to be at some intuitive core level. You know, and that struggle seems to be how they're defining neurosis. The part of you that likes the comforts of home, and the part of you that is always scratching at the back door wanting out. You know, the part of us that's, if you will, wild, and the part that's domesticated. Right? And I think most of us can probably appreciate the experience of feeling divided within ourselves, occasionally against ourselves, right? I had a college English professor once say that the basis of every story ever written or told could be summed up in one phrase: two worlds collide. Two worlds collide. And those two worlds don't cancel each other out. They're both true, I think. And they both need to be brought to the bargaining table to hammer out a treaty that's going to serve them both, rather than stuffing one or the other under the floorboards just to be rid of the tension. You know what I'm saying? Anybody here a dog owner? Dog owners? You'll probably recognize this. When you're playing a tug of war with a dog over like an old sneaker, and you let go of the sneaker, the dog doesn't generally run off with it, does he? Bury it in the backyard. He trots back to you with it because what he wants, or what she wants, isn't the sneaker. It's the tugging. The tugging, I think, is really where the spark is. Really where the spark is. And so, passion comes from a word that means to suffer. It comes from the passion of the Christ. Right? And suffer, by the way, comes from a word meaning to bear. So I think that if we're willing to bear the tug of war between the part of us that wants passion and the part that wants security, and in full consciousness, what I mean by that is all instruments turned on, I think we're going to probably make better decisions about how to manage them than if all the instruments are turned off and we're not paying attention. I think we're going to make better decisions and about how to manage the two. And by manage, partly what I mean is suffering creatively, not just neurotically. You know? And suffering creatively means making it useful. Suffering that's ultimately useful, that leads to insights, that leads to change, that leads to solutions. Right? So, the word educate means to draw out. That's the etymology of the word, to draw out. I'm just saying, I'm suggesting to make it literal. Draw it out. Create pictures that capture the tension. Write about your conflicts between these two warring parts of yourself, assuming that they are. Talk it out. Play it up. You know what I'm saying? Plow it in and essentially use it to grow is really what I'm getting at. There is, I just read recently, there is a sect of people in Japan known as the Ainu, and they ritualize the proximity of the wild and the tame in us by keeping a fire pit in the center of their homes, positioned so that the sun streaming through the eastern window in the morning touches the fire. And what they say is that the sun goddess is visiting her sister, the fire goddess, and that you should not walk through the beams lest you break their contact. And I just love that as a way to kind of picture this tug of war. Right? So here's another example from an entirely different arena. All right, and that's the arena. I mean, in terms of another example of this contest, and that's the arena of relationships. And I would just want to mention this for a minute because passion is not just a vocational issue. We all know this intuitively, of course. It's not just a vocational issue. So what I'm referring to now is the struggle, for instance, between passion and love. Now, these two things are, I think, challenging to manage in relationships because they tend to work toward very different goals, like passion and security do, right? Love wants assurances. Passion wants abandon, right? Love wants to be soothed. Passion wants to be stimulated, inflamed even. Love wants to go steady. Even the word, going steady, right? Passion wants to be swept away. It's tough, we know this. It's tough to stay worked up over the same person that you look to for safety and security. And a lot of people, of course, and I've been there myself, a lot of people would prefer to have warmth rather than heat. You know? We would rather have, we're willing to give up heat for warmth and passion for just companionship, right? But I don't think it's an either-or equation. Here's the paradoxical thing again. It's not an either-or equation, even though I think we've been taught that it is. That you either have passion in a relationship or serenity, but not really both. You know, you either have freedom or commitment, but not both. You know, it's like either Wuthering Heights or the remains of the day. You know, I can use that illusion. You know, but it's not. It's not, in my opinion, either or. It's both and. And the tugging, again, is where the spark is. And we need both. When I was growing up, my father was a scientist, built a contraption in the basement of the house. It was an electrical generator called a Tesla coil. And it was crowned by 2 copper wires at the top, between which a bright purple spark would jump back and forth. And I just have this image in my mind when I think about this subject, because I think whether we're talking about electricity moving between 2 poles or 2 people, I think the same principle is pretty much working here, and that's that a spark requires a gap. Right? If there's no gap, if there's no space between the 2 people, there's no sizzle. And so we're back again to the equation of paradox, holding the tension between 2 things that seem to be opposed, right? But really have to work together. Passion and love, passion and security, togetherness and separateness. All right? So, I read a book a few years back, written by a poet by the name of Robert Bly. You guys ever heard of Robert Bly? Great. And the book is called A Little Book on the Human Shadow. And in it, he has one of the best descriptions I have ever run across for how this split happens in the human psyche between the conditioned self and the natural self, and why it is so hard to mend and get the spark back. And so here's the way Bly explains it. He says, when we're 1 or 2 years old, every one of us, when we're 1 or 2 years old, we have a 360-degree personality, okay? Energy, exuberance, enthusiasm radiating out in all directions until our parents start sending us to our rooms for radiating certain parts of it. Right? I consulted with a woman last year who said that when she was growing up, her parents sent her to her room for any displays of negative emotions. Tears, frustration, anger. They punished her. They banished her. Maybe more to the point. They disfellowshipped her. You're familiar with that term, right? And so, at 40 years old, it's no surprise that after a lifetime of repressing half of her emotional repertoire, she is feeling blocked from being her full, passionate self. And the one that she's going to need in order to become the healer that she intuits herself to be. And to build a business around that and a life around that. And I think she quite rightly describes her mission in life at 40 years old as soul retrieval. Interesting term. Soul retrieval, taking it back, right? So, Bly says that each one of us has an invisible bag that we drag behind us, and whatever parts of us our parents didn't like, whether it's negative emotions or high spirits or restlessness or anything that follows nice girls don't and big boys don't, gets sliced off the pie and stuffed in the bag. All right? Then we get into school, he says. Yeah. And in the service of fitting in and having report cards that say gets along well with others, we stuff even more of ourselves into the bag. Whole slabs of enthusiasm and exuberance and authenticity in the bag, right? Carl Sagan. Remember Carl Sagan? He once described the difference between going to a kindergarten class and a high school class to talk about science. And he said, the kindergartners, open for business. Avidly curious, endlessly enthusiastic, Natural-born scientists never heard of a dumb question. The high schoolers, jaded. Just the sense of wonder, for instance, relegated to kid stuff. And of course, terrified of asking dumb questions. Then, Bly says, we get into the working world. And in order to continue winning friends and influencing people, we stuff even more of ourselves in the bag. You know, parts of ourselves that organizational life would probably prefer you leave out in the parking lot when you punch in. You know what I'm saying? Your emotional life, your personal life, your spiritual life. You know? I used to teach the callings workshops in corporations. I couldn't even use that word in corporations. I couldn't even use the word. It was just brined in religious overtones. I had to relanguage it, you know, lay it between the lines, engagement, you know, things like that. So there's a certain taboo there, is what they were communicating. So, out of the round pie of life force that every one of us started this game out with, the average 20-year-old ends up with a slice. So we spend the first 20 years trying to decide what to put in the bag, and the rest of our lives, he says, trying to get them out again. And this is not so easy, all right? I offer a generous bow to what it takes people to retrieve to do soul retrieval, if you will, right? It's not so easy, and I was reminded how not easy it was by an interaction I had about 2 years ago with my twin brother. I went out to visit him, and we were hiking on a trail in the Santa Cruz Mountains near where he lives. And we were having a debate about how susceptible we actually are to cultural conditioning. He seemed to think he was sort of above it. And in order to make my point how susceptible we are, I dared him to hold hands with me until we reached a bend in the forest path, maybe 100 feet up, all right? And he reaches out his hand, accompanied by a look that I think roughly translated to, I call your bluff. And there was clearly nobody around. But the next 10 seconds provoked an outbreak of reflexes that would have put Pavlov's dogs to shame. I'm not kidding. Embarrassment and awkwardness and self-consciousness, paranoia. I mean, pure conditioning. All we were doing was holding hands. I mean, just barely pushing a toe across the line. And all the alarm bells went off. You know, and we didn't even really dare this escapade in public. And I wouldn't be a proper twin either if I didn't report that he broke first. That's what twins do. So, in the spirit of looking at the issue of vitality and passion, what I would love to offer you right now is some hands-on. I would love to offer you 20 questions, 20 incredibly nosy personal questions that are just designed to give you a snapshot of some good, hard personal data about the state of vitality in your life, whether it's in your work life or your non-work life, all right? So what I'd love you to do if your game is grab pen and paper. And we have extras if anybody would like. If anybody needs, thank you, Nandro. Because I would like you guys to go home with some good, hard data from just this evening's presentation that you can use. Rubber meets the road. All right, so these are just some call and response questions. A couple of suggestions about responding to the questions. The first one is just shoot from the hip as best you can. All right, just respond spontaneously to the questions. All right, how many of you guys have ever been told, you think too much? That sound familiar? Okay, well.
That's the first question?
No. No, this is just so you make an end run around the left brain and try to generate some unfiltered data, all right? The second one is try to be as specific as you can in responding to the questions. I'll try to remind you of this as we go through. Just because I think the more specific the data, the more useful it ends up being. Right? You guys know who Lily Tomlin is? Yeah. Well, she has this fabulous monologue called The Search for Signs of Intelligent Life in the Universe. And there's a line in there where she says, ever since I was a little girl, I always wanted to be somebody. Now I see I should have been more specific. And the third suggestion is write the questions down. Because if you happen to be looking at these notes a month down the road, it'll just make more sense. Otherwise, it'll be like, the answer was chocolate, but like, what was the question? It's chocolate. Yeah, right. Chocolate's the answer to all questions. All right. So, the point here is just to generate some information about where does passion and vitality and enthusiasm and mojo and spark, and call it what you will, well up to the surface in your life. Just to begin identifying where that is, what inspires passion in your life, and what does your life force, if you will, want from you at this particular juncture. All right? So, first question, how many of you guys are list makers? You make lists, all right? You find that you get more done, you stay focused, you do less forgetting, you cut down on profanity in the house when you make lists. So if yours are anything like mine, they're practical lists. They're to-do lists and grocery lists and inventory lists and even bucket lists, all right? But what I want you to do right now is to write a list of pleasures. Pleasures. I'll prime the pump on some of these for a minute, all right? Because I think a key part of simply living passionately is paying close attention to the pleasures and the joys and the wonders of life and celebrating them, acknowledging them and celebrating them, not letting them go slip by unheralded, all right? So, have anybody ever heard of Jean Houston? A mythologist named Jean Houston. She became kind of famous some years back when she was identified as Hillary Clinton's personal astrologer. I don't know if you remember this, but in any case, she's a brilliant thinker all by herself. And she says that people who are identified as larger than life are not that way because they're physically imposing, right? They're charismatic, or they're heroic, or they're living their lives on grand stages and at the forefront of revolutions or whatever. She says they're larger than life because they are profoundly present to the stuff of their lives. That's how she describes it, profoundly present. In other words, these are people who use their senses more than most people. That was a big part that she said. They inhabit their minds and their bodies more than most people. They are fascinated by exploration more than most. In other words, what she says is they're just simply cooking on more burners. All right? So when you go through these to make a list of passions, you might just think of the senses, the 5, 6 senses, and just use that as a guide. So it could be anything like pleasures like eating chocolate mousse, right? Or spooning with your dog, right? Or getting together with your bowling league on Tuesday nights, right? Well, it wouldn't be Tuesdays. That would be CNM. It must be a Wednesday bowling league, you know? Or it could be just taking a long, hot shower, or sitting by yourself and playing the piano late at night. Anything that you represents the kind of pleasures that you do experience in the course of an average week or month. So just write a list. Some of the pleasures. I'm sorry? Oh, what are the 5 senses? Let's see if I can do this. Well, there's sight, smell, hearing, taste, and touch. And of course, it may be 6 senses like intuition. So before we proceed, would anybody take pleasure in finding this brooch that we found here? It's in the shape of looks like a flower. Is that yours? All right. You're most welcome. It was given to me by, where's the gentleman? Ah, there, in the back. Thank you.
Duck back here.
All right, so I'm a big believer in going public, so every so many questions, why don't we just open it up and hear some of these? Anybody, just shoot one out. What's a pleasure? Dancing. Playing piano. What kind of piano? I mean, what kind of music? Classical mix. Okay. What else? Reading a good mystery.
Reading newspaper in bed.
Reading a newspaper in bed. All right. Ice cream. What flavor? You got a favorite? What's it called? Cake batter. Boy, that sounds just, wow. Although I have a recollection that when I was in junior high school, I would go into grocery stores with my twin brother and buy icing and just go like that. It explains why I have more cavities than teeth. Anybody else? One or two more?
Playing hide and seek with little grandchildren.
Hide and seek with the grandchildren.
Anything chocolate.
Chocolate. I couldn't agree more. Teamwork. Fabulous. Driving fast with the radio cranked up. I love it. Wow. They're a wild bunch. I'm sorry?
Bubble bath.
Bubble baths. All right. All right. The sound of the Great Highland Pipes. Oh, all right. Sense-around experience. Was there one over here? Eating sausage and peppers. That's great. I said sausage. All right, another question. The original definition of the word adventure was something about to happen, as in Advent, celebrating the coming of Christ. All right? So a sense of adventure is related to a sense of anticipation about life. All right? The prospect of new growth or new birth. All right? And I think this has helped along immeasurably myself. If you always give yourself something to look forward to, on some level, always give yourself something to look forward to. So what I want you to do is simply name some involvements that you very predictably look forward to, that when they come up on your calendar, they predictably make you feel a sense of excited anticipation, no matter what arena we're talking about. Just write down a few things that make you feel excited anticipation when they come around on your calendar. Could be a road trip, could be a meeting with a certain friend, could be a vacation. Bubble bath. Next question. I once spent a glorious month in Italy, wandering through the highest concentration of UNESCO World Heritage Sites in the world, and of course through the ruins of the Roman Empire, which amaze me the same way that dinosaurs amaze me, that such a thing once existed, you know? And in fact, I build most of my vacations around places in the world where there are grand ruins, because they never fail to fill me with the experience of wonder and awe, which I personally consider essential ingredients in living passionately, is to have a regular practice of wonder and awe. All right? So my question is simply, name a few things that predictably fill you with that experience, no matter what it is, whether it's grand atriums or the view down from the top of skyscrapers or your own grandchildren. Name a few things that predictably make you feel a sense of wonder and awe. Did you have to have experienced them? Well, no. I'm not sure exactly what you're getting at, but I would say go with it. Anybody feel like taking a shot at this one? Anything, something that
Sunrise.
wows you. A sunrise. Babies. Okay. Childbirth. Yeah. Say it again. Being on a ship. Fascinating.
Tabletop Mountains and the meeting of the two oceans in Cape Town, South Africa.
The meeting of the two oceans down at Cape Town, South Africa. Why, what happens right there?
It's just the serenity of it, and it's like a
Oh. Oh, well, that's interesting. Huh.
It's your next trip.
Yeah. Really? What else?
The night sky.
The night sky. Right. Beethoven's music knowing that he was deaf. Right. Anybody else? Say it a little louder. Treading where Christ walked. Yeah, that's compelling. Way in the back, a little loud.
Standing at the edge of the ocean.
Dancing at the edge of the ocean.
Standing.
Standing. Well, you should try dancing.
I would probably fall in and drown.
Not at the edge.
Anybody else? One more? Yeah.
Usain Bolt running.
Oh, what's his first name? Usain Bolt. Watching him run. Yeah. Yeah. The Grand Canyon. Yeah.
Watching animals and wildlife.
Ooh, watching animals and wildlife, especially maybe in the wild. Cathedrals. Fabulous. All right, another question. There's a book out, came out a few years ago. It was a bestseller. It was called Corner Office. And it was by a New York Times columnist named Adam Bryant. And he interviewed in that book 700 CEOs in the United States. And he asked them, what qualities do you see most often in those who succeed? And number one on their collective lists was passionate curiosity. Passionate curiosity. And there's also a concept called neophilia. You can read about it in a book called New by Winifred Gallagher. Neophilia is the urge to explore. And researchers researchers who study the traits of people who tend to flourish over the years have found that these people tend to score quite high in neophilia, in the urge for novelty. That's really what it's about, the hunger for novelty, all right? So, my question, what are you most passionately curious about and fascinated by? In other words, what do you love to study and explore? What do you love to write about and blog about? What do you love to investigate and try to understand? Name a few subjects that fall under that category. Most fascinates you. Another question. You've heard of the concept of a flow state. Can't remember the fellow's name. I think it's pronounced Csikszentmihalyi. Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. He's up at the University of Chicago. He wrote the book called Flow. And flow is a experience that's typically characterized by being completely focused, completely absorbed. You forget about time. You forget about your bodily needs. Sometimes, unfortunately, you forget about your family. You're content even when it's difficult, but you're in a completely absorbed, focused state. So the question I want to ask is, what activities do you engage in that typically put you in a flow state? And if you can't think of any at the moment, think about the last time you had that experience or something like it, where you were absolutely focused and in the proverbial zone. Next question. I had a conversation a few years back with my 13-year-old niece, and the conversation culminated in her standing in front of me and rolling her eyes and saying, as only a 13-year-old can say, "That is so last week." And I'm like, wait a minute, you're a 7th grader who still has stuffed animals on her pillow. I mean, that is so 6th grade. Having these kind of conversations with a 13-year-old. But part of the reason that it stung was that I sort of pride myself on having a finger on the pulse, at least of my own life. And I think of this trait as not only part, I like to think of this trait as not only part of what Gene Houston calls living a larger life, but also essential to having feel for what wants to emerge in your own life at any given juncture, what's trying to happen right here in this conversation, in this job, in this situation, in any circumstances, it's about having a feel for what's trying to happen, all right? So my question to you is, and I really want you to encourage you to just be spontaneous in responding to this one. What do you intuit is trying to emerge in your life right now? What is trying to emerge? And just go anywhere you want. Again, work or non-work modes of expression. Name a thing or two or three that's trying to emerge, trying to happen in your life right now that may be struggling to do that. Just go with your intuition. Another question. There's a place out in Sausalito, California. Any of you guys from that neck of the woods? All right. It's called the Institute of Noetic Sciences. And it was started by the astronaut Edgar Mitchell to study human potential. And they have, at the Institute, the world's largest database of spontaneous remissions. All right? These are those that can't be explained by medical treatment. And there are 3,500 cases from all around the world of what they call remarkable recoveries from disease. And I did a story for, do you remember Omni magazine? Any of you guys? A popular science magazine? I did a story on that database for Omni years ago and found out that one of the most consistent things that immediately preceded a spontaneous remission was a profound affirmative personal change that came right before this remarkable recovery. So a profound affirmative personal change could be taking radical responsibility for your life in some way you hadn't prior to that, or a dramatic reconciliation with somebody, or a revelatory experience, or allowing some long-denied passion to finally get airtime. You know, what the poet Auden calls your foiled creative fire. All right? So the question I want to ask is, you know, independent of whether this would heal your body, can you think of some profound personal and affirmative personal change you could make that nonetheless would have a profound healing effect on your life? Anything that pops into your mind, some profound affirmative personal change you could make that would be healing. See what, if anything, comes up. Now I realize that obviously this could be very private material, but does anybody feel like sharing some profound and affirmative personal change you could make that would have a healing effect on your life? Anybody feel inclined to share? Yeah.
Stop worrying.
Stop worrying. Ah, wow, yeah. I've always thought that when I'm looking back, that would be one of the top regrets I would have. The tragic amount of time I've spent worrying. I think I learned from my parents that somehow if I wasn't worrying about the future, I wasn't taking it seriously. Yeah. Oh, changing your definition of success. Yeah, thank you. That's a great one. Anybody else? A couple more? Noetic, N-O-E-T-I-C, Noetic Sciences. Yeah. Anybody else feel like sharing one? Yeah. Whoa. Let the corporation go. Okay. Said with great enthusiasm. Enthusiasm, by the way, means the God within. En-theos means the God within. So by following your natural enthusiasms, you are by definition following God. Just saying. Was there one back here? Yeah. Not being afraid. Okay. Great. Thank you. All right. Another question. Some years ago, my brother and I fell into a conversation about what superpower we would choose to have if we were given the chance. And after exhausting the usual variations on the Midas touch and X-ray vision for the usual juvenile and greedy reasons. It's the inner 14-year-old in every man. He settled on the ability to speak any language on earth. Yeah. And I settled on the ability to lay my hand on any book and instantly absorb everything in it. So, just take a shot at this. If you were granted one superpower, what would you pick? Just go with your intuition. Let's hear a few of these. Anybody? Mind reader. Okay.
Healing.
Say it again.
Healing.
Healing. Aha. Have you ever seen the movie Resurrection?
Yes.
With Ellen Burstyn? It's a story about a woman who's granted that power, I think, at the effect of a lightning strike and how that unfolds. Way in the back.
Going back in time.
Going back in time. Not forward? No. Interesting. A few others. A superpower, yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. To know exactly what you need to know. That's great. A couple more. Anybody else? Superpowers. Healing Gaia. Healing the earth. All right. Yeah, that would be a profound skill. Anybody else? A couple more? Possessing the knowledge of the word. The world. Okay. Possessing all the knowledge of the world. Oh, boy. Talk about getting a swelled head. That's great. All right, another question. This is very straightforward. Name your most favorite quality about yourself. Just spontaneously, what comes to mind? Your favorite quality about yourself. Another question. Name a movie that you've watched repeatedly. And what the theme is. What did he say? Willingly. Right. No, this would be volition. Yeah, this is one you would choose to watch. But name a movie or two that you've watched over and over again, and what's, in just a sentence fragment, what's the theme? What's the theme of the movie? Oh, absolutely. Yeah, one per genre. Let's hear a few of these, just for entertainment's sake. Anybody?
It's a Wonderful Life.
It's a Wonderful Life. Say it again. Master and Commander. Oh, yeah. Princess Bride. Yeah, that was terrific. That was terrific. In the back. What was it? Rain Man. Yeah. Yeah. Ghostbusters and Wizard of Oz. Aha. Anybody else? Yeah. The Godfather. Okay. The first one, the original. Okay. Anybody else? Yeah. Forbidden Planet. Okay. In the back.
Atari.
Atari. And again, just to consider what the theme is that keeps drawing you back. There may be some information in there that's more than just purely entertainment value. All right, some more questions. What do you typically pray about the most, assuming you pray? What do you pray about or for the most? Another handful of questions. The term mentor comes from the Odyssey. Mentor was actually a person. He was an old man who was entrusted with the care and the education of Ulysses' son while Ulysses was off in the Trojan Wars. So, if you had a chance to have a mentor right now, dead or alive, a mentor to counsel you in whatever decisions are up for you right now, especially ones that involve coming more into a sense of aliveness, who would you pick and why? If you had a chance to have a mentor, living or dead, animal, vegetable, or mineral, who would you pick? And just in a couple of words, Why? What's the quality of that mentor that you would be calling upon? Another question. Name, well, let's put it this way. The kind of scenes in movies that most typically make me choke up are scenes of dramatic reconciliations, scenes of acts of kindness, people sticking up for one another, and underdogs triumphing over some obstacle, especially when that obstacle is a person. All right? So, all I want you to write down is the kind of scenes in movies that most typically make you choke up. What are they about? Here's one for you. You know the talk show host Larry King? He was asked once, who makes a great guest for your show? And his response was, well, they've got to be funny, articulate, self-deprecating, and they have to have a chip on their shoulder. In other words, a grudge. Some combative attitude about something to prove. All right? So I'm not encouraging people generally to nurture their grudges. I'm just acknowledging that they are a force of passion. They are a form and a force of passion. And they can lead to righteous action. All right? So I'm just saying, what I want you to jot down, assuming this even speaks to you, is do you have a grudge? Write down a grudge or two that you have. Or is that a whole other workshop? Yeah. But right, something that some chip you have on your shoulder about something. Maybe it's a disadvantage you had growing up. Maybe it's the fact that you didn't go to college. Whatever. A betrayal at the hands of somebody. Name some chip you have on your shoulder. Last two questions. The sculptor Henry Moore once said that the secret to life was to have a task, something you devote your entire life to, something that you bring everything to. And the most important thing, he said, is that it must be something you cannot possibly do. And I think what he's getting at is pitching ourselves to something greater than ourselves. You know, so that our actions and our values are geared towards something that is larger than we are, and something like a mission that we will never live long enough to actually see accomplished. The same way that the people who helped build the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris, most of them never lived long enough to see it completed because it took 182 years to build. Right? So what I'm asking you is to name something like that, right? Some meta-passion that drives your life, or that you would like to drive your life, some value that you devote all your energies to, that is something you can never ultimately live long enough to see come to fruition. You know, maybe it's helping empower people with cancer, right? Maybe it's making people laugh, or inspiring people to lifelong learning, strengthening communities. You know, there's something you can have an effect on, but ultimately you'll never see it come to complete fruition. Protecting the environment, as somebody said. Last question. One of the most successful interactive public art projects in the world is something called Before I Die. And it was started by a New Orleans artist named Candy Chang, who put up a giant chalkboard on the side of an old abandoned building. And it was filled with the words, "Before I die, I want to," and a line. "Before I die, I want to." And there were hundreds of them. And they were filled up within days. She erased them, filled up again within days. There's now something like 500 of these in 70 countries around the world. And essentially what they're dealing with is, of course, bucket list items. Okay? Before I die, I want to XYZ. So, all I want you to do, and you know, because I think these are critical to passion, of course, is to write down a half a dozen, minimum, of a half a dozen bucket list items right now, assuming you've never done this before. All right? Before you die, what would you like to accomplish or experience? And it doesn't have to be world-shattering, of course. You know, swimming with the dolphins, learning a language, forgiving somebody, whatever. Before I die, I want to, and fill out a half a dozen things. Just go with your intuition, too. Anybody, by any chance, feel like sharing one or two of these? Something, an outtake from a bucket list? Anybody? What do you want to do before you die? Skydiving. Say it again? Skydiving. Skydiving, all right. Cure diseases. Anyone in particular? All of them. Got it. Okay, fabulous. Ride the Queen Mary from London to Southampton. Southampton, New York. Okay, yeah. That's Southampton. Okay. Got it. Okay, the Queen Mary. All right, that's great. Oh, see your two girls get married. Wonderful. A few others. Anybody else? Spend time in a Greek monastery. Aha. I've heard Mount Athos is a fabulous place. Oh, not for women. Oh, that's a shame. I read about it in one of Nikos Kazantzakis' book, and it just sounded fantastic. Ah, that's a shame. Way in the back.
We had a hand up here.
Ride a motorcycle through Iraq and Afghanistan.
Ride a motorcycle to Iraq and Afghanistan. Interesting choice of destinations.
Through, not to. Through.
Long swim. Anybody else? One more? Oh, travel to another heavenly body. Yeah, right. Space tourism. All right, so because, and thank you so much for your willingness to take a crack at all these questions. These are some of them, I suppose, are questions people don't ever ask themselves, no less all in one evening. So because I'm a big believer in the power of going public and sharing, what I'd love to give you a chance to do is share these in some small groups. But what I want you to do one step first, skim through all of the responses you had to the questions and circle all recurring themes. All right? Just words or phrases that, if any, kept cropping up. Because what we're looking for are patterns. The brain is a pattern-seeking organ. All right? So just skim through and see if there's any action items, any words or phrases that kept popping up, and just circle them. And if there's more than one pattern, circle one set, underline another. See what jumps out, if anything. All right. So I've been informed that we don't actually have time to do a group share, that we need to wrap. So let's do that. But before I go, I just want to say that whatever you circled is something that is calling for attention in our lives. All right? And I'm just saying, find some way in the next little phase, the next even hour, the next couple of days, of talking it out loud with some people who might be receptive audience to it. And I say that specifically because you don't want to cast pearls before swine. One of my fatal mistakes in my grown-up life was to share newfound enthusiasms with my most cynical family members. You might as well just disembowel yourself on the spot, you know, because what's going to happen at that point is sometimes the cynic will do what cynics do. They'll find all the problems and the obstacles, and they'll ask you those devil's advocate questions that always tend to be a little heavy on the devil, a little light on the advocate. But I do encourage you most heartfully to find ways of sharing whatever you circle with people who love you and who care and who are open and receptive. So thank you so much, Najra. Thank you so much for inviting me. Bob, thank you guys. Most of this material comes from the book that just came out about 10 days ago. So I'm a proud papa, and I'm delighted, of course, to chat with folks and sign books if you like. So great, good luck.
Thank you, Greg. That was great. Appreciate it. So, first off, my guess is the temperature went up in the room because there was a lot of thinking going on. I could see all of you really pondering this stuff. So let me really take this great message that Greg shared with us tonight and bring it home for the job search. So one of the things that we talk about all the time, and just by the title of Greg's presentation, talking about passion, we talk about character and competence. That's what recruiters talk about all the time, about what they're looking for in candidates. What's really interesting, and I've said this many times about how to understand where your next best opportunity is, where your next best fit is. It's like, remember back in the days when we used to do English lit stuff and you would read a book and you would be asked to talk about the hero of the story or the heroine of the story and say, what makes that person tick, right? You remember, did anybody ever do that? You had to write an essay about who that person was and what was going on in their lives. Well, if you think about, if you were to answer all of Greg's questions, do you think you're going to know a little bit more about yourself? Here's one of the most interesting things. I've been volunteering here for 5 years, and one of the most important things we get into, even more important probably than resumes and all that kind of stuff, is you have to know yourself, you have to know what you're passionate about, and if you can't show that to an employer, most employers don't care how competent you are. They want to know, can they work with you? Are you passionate about what you do? And what's interesting is if you really start looking at all this stuff that Greg is pulling out of you in these questions, I mean, you may think of this stuff and say, how does this affect my job search? You better know who the heck you are. You better know what drives you. I mean, I've had conversations with people in this room, and in 2 minutes, I'm turned off to you. You know why? Because you're giving me your laundry list of stuff you've done. And I don't really care about the stuff you've done. I want to care about what value you're going to bring to the organization, and am I going to enjoy working with you, and are you going to be energized? And all of this stuff is pulling out of you what you're passionate about. It really is. I mean, you see me get up here. I'm not, you need to think about being passionate. I really think this will help you in your job search. Wouldn't you like to be passionate and come work for me? I mean, if that's the same content, right? But a little bit different about whether I care about what I'm saying, whether I'm energized by it, what it means to me. So all of these questions that Greg is getting you to think about, if you don't think that ties into your job search, pearls before swine. Sorry. Because this is very much about your job search, because it's about you getting in touch with who you are, getting that passion piece back out, not only in your own thinking, but on your face, on your demeanor, and how you talk to people, because that's what an employer is going to hire. I'm serious. This is great stuff. If you thought that you were just doing this warm, fuzzy thing, like, what the heck does this have to do with me getting a job search, what movie I like? Well, let me tell you, it talks a lot about who you are. You find out what you're really interested in, what drives you, what you're passionate about. That's got to come out when you're having that 45-second elevator speech and when you're talking to people. And if you don't think that's the case, don't come back, because we can have the most amazing speakers up here in the world, and if you can't figure out how to get yourself energized about what you do and why someone should hire you, you're going to be forever in this job search process, no matter how good you are, unless the economy gets so great and there's such a demand for the people, the skills that you have, that it doesn't matter whether you're passionate or not, they just want you for that skill set. I think we're going to be a long way away before that time happens for us. So this was great stuff. Greg, thank you for bringing it to the table for us. Please think about this stuff. Really think about it when it comes to your elevator speech, when you're out networking. Think about what you're passionate about and let that shine. That's what's going to make you memorable. That's going to make someone turn around and say, you know what, you really ought to go talk to Edia, because she's just amazing. I know this woman, and she's awesome. I don't know if she can add 2 + 2, but boy, she's energized. Okay? I do know she can add 2 + 2. All right. On that note, thank you all for listening. Greg, let's give another round of applause for Greg. And I know he's got his books up here. So, I think you want to wrap up?
Now, if I could just take the prerogative, is Grace still in the room? Grace? Oh dear. I brought books that I've borrowed from her for 5 months. Okay, well, yeah, Greg is here for a few more minutes, and he has some wonderful books, and we'd love to see you at the book table. Huh?
And we'll pass the mic over to Edie to wrap us in prayer.
Shall we stand to honor God? Father, we thank you. You gave us such a marvelous, magnificent banquet when you presented your servant to speak to us tonight. We just want to give you special thanks. For some of us tonight, this is a game changer. We came in one way and we're going out a total different way. Now help us as you reteach these lessons so that as we live and as we walk with every step, we will become more and more and more to match the image that you have of us the day you created us in your mind. Lord, the only thing we want to do is to love you in exactly the way that you originally intended for us to love you in every relationship, in every speech, in every act, true to you, true to ourselves, true to the world. We give you praise, we give you honor, and we give you glory. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Edie. Everybody get home safe and come on up and say hi to Greg.